When my daughter-in-law Jessica told her friends I was too frail to watch my own grandchildren, she had no idea I'd been taking kickboxing classes for 3 years. She also had no idea that while she was busy bad-mouthing me at her book club, I'd be the one watching those same friends' children during the most important court hearing of her life. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The whole mess started on a Tuesday morning in October when I was dropping off homemade apple turnovers at my son Marcus's house in Riverside Heights. I'd been baking since 5 in the morning because that's what you do when you're retired and your arthritis wakes you up before dawn anyway. The smell of cinnamon and butter had filled my little kitchen on Maple Street, and I'd made enough for Marcus, Jessica, and my 2 precious grandchildren, Emma and Tyler. I knocked on their front door, balancing the still warm pastries in my favorite ceramic dish. Through the window, I could see Jessica on the phone in the living room, gesturing wildly with her free hand, while little Emma, who was 4, sat cross-legged on the carpet building something elaborate with her blocks. Tyler, barely 2, was toddling around with his stuffed elephant, making those adorable babbling sounds that always melted my heart. Jessica opened the door with her phone still pressed to her ear, rolling her eyes at whoever was on the other end. She mouthed, "Thank you," and took the dish from me, but I could tell she was distracted. I started to leave, not wanting to interrupt her call, when I heard her voice carry through the screen door I'd just closed. "Oh, please, Linda. You know I can't ask Marcus's mom to babysit. She's like 75 and can barely manage her own house these days. What if one of the kids got hurt? What if there was an emergency? She's too frail for 2 active children." I stopped dead in my tracks, on their front porch. 75? I was 68, thank you very much, and I'd just completed a 2-mile walk that morning before my baking session. Too frail? Last week I'd helped my neighbor Dave move his new refrigerator up his back steps when the delivery guys claimed it was too heavy for the entrance. "I mean, she's sweet and all," Jessica continued, completely unaware that I was still within earshot. "But she moves so slowly, and you know how she is with that cane. I'd be worried sick the entire time. No, I'll just have to figure something else out for the Henderson wedding. Maybe we can find a real babysitter." A real babysitter. The words hit me like a slap. I gripped my walking cane tighter, not because I needed it for support, but because I was trying to control the surge of anger rising in my chest. That cane wasn't even mine originally. It had belonged to my late husband Robert, and I carried it more as a comfort item than a necessity. My doctor had actually been impressed with my mobility and balance at my last checkup. I walked back to my car as quietly as possible, my mind racing. The Henderson wedding, I knew about that. Jessica had mentioned it weeks ago, some fancy affair where she was supposed to be the maid of honor for her college roommate. Marcus was going to be her +1, and they'd been looking forward to it for months. It was this coming Saturday, which gave them only 4 days to find childcare. The drive back to my house was a blur of hurt feelings and wounded pride. I'd been babysitting those children since Emma was born, and Tyler had practically grown up in my arms during those early months when Jessica was dealing with postpartum depression. I'd been the one to walk the floors with him during those endless, colicky nights, the one to teach Emma her colors and help her with her first attempts at tying shoes. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a few minutes, staring at my small but well-maintained house. The garden I'd planted and tended for 15 years was still blooming beautifully. The walkway I'd repaired myself just last month was perfectly level, and the porch swing where I read every morning was sturdy as ever. Too frail, my foot. That evening, Marcus called me around dinner time. "Hey, Mom, I hope I'm not bothering you. Jessica and I have a favor to ask." I already knew what was coming, but I let him continue. "We have this wedding on Saturday. Remember I told you about Sarah Henderson getting married? Jessica's the maid of honor, and we really need someone to watch Emma and Tyler for the day." The ceremony's at 2, but with pictures and the reception, we probably won't be back until midnight. Oh, honey, I'd love to help, but I'm not sure I'm up for it, I heard myself saying. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth because every instinct I had was screaming to say yes, to spend time with my grandchildren, to be the reliable grandmother I'd always been. What do you mean, Mom? You watch them all the time. Well, it's just that they're getting so active, you know? Emma's 4 now, and Tyler's into everything. What if something happened? What if there was an emergency and I couldn't handle it? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mom, where is this coming from? You're great with the kids. They love spending time with you. I don't know, Marcus. Maybe you should find someone younger, someone more capable. Another pause, longer this time. Did Jessica say something to you? My son knew me too well. Not directly to me, no. Mom, what happened? I told him about overhearing the phone conversation, about Jessica's comments to her friend Linda. I tried to keep the hurt out of my voice, but Marcus had always been able to read me like a book. Mom, I am so sorry. That's completely unacceptable, and Jessica and I are going to have a serious conversation about this. Don't make a big thing out of it, honey. She's stressed about the wedding, and maybe she has a point. Maybe I am getting too old to handle 2 young children for an entire day. That's ridiculous, and you know it. You're in better shape than most people half your age. Didn't you just tell me last week about your kickboxing class? I had mentioned my fitness classes to Marcus, though I downplayed them. 3 years ago, my doctor had suggested I try some form of exercise to help with my arthritis and general fitness. I'd expected to hate it, but I'd actually fallen in love with the kickboxing classes at the community center. At first, I'd been the oldest person there by at least 20 years, but the instructor, a patient young woman named Kelly, had modified the routines for me and encouraged me every step of the way. Now I could hold my own with women decades younger than me. My balance had improved dramatically. My arthritis pain had decreased, and I felt stronger and more confident than I had in years. But Jessica apparently saw an old woman with a cane and made her assumptions accordingly. Look, Mom, forget what Jessica said. We trust you completely with Emma and Tyler. Will you please babysit for us Saturday? I took a deep breath. Let me think about it, okay? I'll call you tomorrow. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Jessica's words over and over in my mind. Too frail. Can barely manage her own house. Real babysitter. Each phrase stung worse than the last. I got up around midnight and made myself a cup of chamomile tea, then settled into my favorite armchair with a book. But I couldn't concentrate on the pages. Instead, I found myself looking around my living room, really, seeing it for the first time in a while. The house was immaculate. I'd refinished the hardwood floors myself 2 years ago, painted the walls last spring, and just last month I'd installed new ceiling fans in both bedrooms. The garden outside was thriving under my care. I maintained my own car, and I handled all my finances independently. I volunteered at the local food bank twice a week, where I regularly lifted and moved boxes that would challenge people half my age. Too frail? I was beginning to think Jessica was the one who was mistaken. The next morning, I woke up with a plan forming in my mind. Instead of calling Marcus right away, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I knew Jessica's book club friends fairly well. We'd met at various school events and birthday parties over the years. Linda Patterson, the woman Jessica had been talking to on the phone, lived just 3 streets over from me. I'd also heard Jessica mention that several of her book club friends were struggling to find babysitters lately. There had been some kind of scandal with a local babysitting service, something about unreliable sitters and parents coming home to find their children unsupervised. The story had been all over the neighborhood Facebook groups for weeks. I spent the morning baking. Chocolate chip cookies this time, Emma's favorite. Then I took a shower, put on my nicest casual outfit, and deliberately left my walking cane at home. I wanted to see how I appeared to people when they weren't looking at me through the lens of elderly grandmother with mobility issues. My first stop was Linda Patterson's house. Linda was a lawyer who worked part-time and had twin boys, Jake and Connor, who were both 5 years old. I'd met them at Emma's birthday party last year, and they were sweet kids, though definitely energetic. Linda answered the door in her bathrobe, looking frazzled. Behind her, I could hear the unmistakable sounds of children in full chaos mode. Something crashing, followed by arguing, followed by what sounded like a small person crying. "Oh, Sarah! What a nice surprise. I'm sorry. It's been a crazy morning." "I brought cookies," I said, holding up the container. "And I was wondering if I could ask you about something." "Of course, come in. Boys, come say hello to Mrs. Morrison." Jake and Connor came barreling around the corner, their faces sticky with what appeared to be syrup, their pajamas askew. When they saw the cookies, their eyes lit up like Christmas. "Morning? Can we have one? Please?" "Mom, can we?" "After breakfast," Linda said automatically. "Sorry, Sarah. They had pancakes but somehow managed to get more syrup on themselves than in their mouths." "They're just being kids," I said, smiling at the boys. "Actually, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. I know you mentioned to Jessica that you've been having trouble finding reliable babysitters lately." Linda's expression shifted immediately. "Oh, God, yes. It's been a nightmare. The service we were using turned out to be a complete disaster. And most of the individual sitters I've tried have been either unreliable or way too expensive. Why do you ask?" "A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off." "Well, I've been thinking about offering some babysitting services myself. I have a lot of experience with children, obviously, and I have plenty of time on my hands. I thought maybe I could help out some of the parents in the neighborhood." Linda stared at me for a moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. "You mean like professionally?" "Not exactly professionally, no. More like helping out friends and neighbors. I'd charge much less than the services, and I'm always available. I was thinking maybe I could start with a trial run this Saturday, if anyone needs help." "This Saturday?" Linda's eyes widened. "Sarah, I hate to sound desperate, but I actually do need someone this Saturday. My ex-husband is supposed to take the boys, but he just canceled at the last minute for some work. I have a deposition I absolutely cannot miss, and I've been calling sitters all morning with no luck." "What time do you need someone?" "From about 9 in the morning until around 4 in the afternoon. 7 hours. I know it's a lot, and the boys can be a handful." "I'd be happy to help," I said. "And don't worry about payment. Consider it a trial run." "Sarah, are you sure? That's incredibly generous, but I insist on paying you something. We can discuss that later. Right now, let's just focus on making sure you can get to your deposition without worrying about the boys." Linda looked like she might cry from relief. "You are literally a lifesaver. The boys love you already. They still talk about the games you played with them at Emma's party." I spent another 20 minutes at Linda's house getting details about the boys' routines, favorite foods, and any special instructions. By the time I left, I had a complete plan for Saturday, and Linda had given me contact information for 3 other book club friends who were also desperately seeking reliable childcare. My next stop was Melissa Chen's house. Melissa was a single mom with a 6-year-old daughter named Sophie. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital and often struggled to find coverage for her shifts, especially weekend shifts that paid overtime. Melissa was getting ready for work when I knocked on her door, and Sophie was sitting at the kitchen table finishing her cereal while watching cartoons on a tablet. "Mrs. Morrison, what brings you by?" "I was talking to Linda Patterson this morning, and she mentioned that a lot of parents in the neighborhood have been having trouble finding good babysitters lately." "Oh my God, yes. It's been so stressful. Sophie's regular after-school sitter, moved away last month, and the agency I tried sent someone who showed up an hour late and spent the entire time on her phone. I actually had to leave work early because Sophie called me crying. Well, I have a proposition for you. I'm thinking about offering babysitting services to help out parents in the area. I have lots of experience. I'm always available. And I'd charge much less than the agencies. Melissa looked skeptical at first, but as we talked, I could see her warming up to the idea. Sophie, meanwhile, had abandoned her cereal and was showing me her latest art project, a drawing of what she claimed was a dragon princess. This is beautiful, Sophie. You're quite the artist. Thank you. Do you want to see my other drawings? I have a whole collection. Before I knew it, Sophie was pulling me into the living room to show me her art supplies, chattering excitedly about her favorite colors and the stories behind each drawing. Melissa watched from the doorway with a smile. She doesn't usually warm up to people this quickly, Melissa said quietly. Children have good instincts about people, I replied, admiring a particularly elaborate drawing of what appeared to be a castle surrounded by flowers. By the time I left Melissa's house, I had commitments to babysit for 2 more families on Saturday, including watching Sophie while Melissa worked a double shift at the hospital. My final stop was Jennifer Walsh's house. Jennifer had 3 children, 8-year-old Michael, 6-year-old Ashley, and 4-year-old Ryan. Her husband traveled frequently for work, and she often found herself overwhelmed trying to manage everything on her own. Jennifer was in her front yard when I arrived, attempting to rake leaves while simultaneously keeping an eye on Ryan, who was helping by jumping in every pile she made. "Hi, Jennifer. Looks like you have a good helper there." "Oh, he's helping all right," she said, with a laugh. "At this rate, I'll be raking the same leaves until Christmas." Ryan looked up at the sound of my voice and grinned. "I'm making the leaves fly. Want to see?" He proceeded to demonstrate by launching himself into the nearest pile, sending leaves scattering in every direction. I couldn't help but laugh. "That's very impressive, Ryan. You're definitely making them fly." Jennifer and I talked while Ryan continued his leaf-scattering project. She was even more desperate for reliable childcare than the others, her regular babysitter had recently started college and was no longer available, and she'd had a string of bad experiences with replacement sitters. "Last week I came home and found all 3 kids still wide awake at 10 p.m., eating ice cream for dinner while the babysitter was passed out on my couch," she said. "I'm at the point where I'm afraid to leave them with anyone I don't know, really." Well, what if you knew someone who had extensive experience with children, someone who lived right in the neighborhood, someone who genuinely cared about kids and wasn't just doing it for the money? That would be amazing, but people like that don't exist in the babysitting world. Trust me, I've looked. What if I told you I was thinking about offering babysitting services? Jennifer stopped raking and looked at me with surprise. "You? Really?" "Really. I love children, I have plenty of experience, and I'm looking for ways to stay active and involved in the community. Plus, I know how hard it is for parents to find trustworthy care." We talked for another half hour while the kids played in the yard. Michael and Ashley had come outside during our conversation, and soon all 3 children were competing to show me their various outdoor skills: cartwheels, bike riding, tree climbing, and more leaf jumping. By the time I left Jennifer's house, I had promises to watch her 3 children on Saturday evening while she attended a work function that she'd been planning to skip due to lack of childcare. I drove home that afternoon with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. Saturday was going to be a busy day, but I was looking forward to it. I had commitments to watch Linda's twin boys from 9 to 4, Sophie Chen from noon to 8, and Jennifer's 3 children from 6 to 10 p.m. It would mean I'd be watching children for 13 hours total, with some overlapping time periods, where I'd have multiple families. Most people would think I was crazy for taking on so much at once. Jessica certainly would. But I had a plan, and more importantly, I had something to prove. That evening, Marcus called again. "Mom, have you thought about Saturday?" Jessica feels terrible about what she said, and she really wants to apologize to you. Tell Jessica not to worry about it. And yes, I've thought about Saturday. And I'm afraid I can't babysit Emma and Tyler this weekend. I already have other commitments. There was silence on the other end of the line. Other commitments? I'm babysitting for some other families in the neighborhood. It turns out there's quite a demand for reliable childcare around here. Mom, are you doing this to prove a point? I'm doing this because several parents asked for my help, and I said yes. If that proves a point, so be it. Marcus sighed. We still need someone to watch the kids, Mom. The wedding is in 3 days. I'm sure you'll figure something out. Maybe Jessica can ask around at her book club. I hung up, feeling both satisfied and slightly guilty. I loved my grandchildren, and under normal circumstances, nothing would have made me happier than spending a day with them. But these weren't normal circumstances, and sometimes people needed to learn lessons the hard way. Friday came and went in a blur of preparation. I planned activities for each group of children, stocked up on snacks and supplies, and made sure my house was completely child-proofed. I also did something I hadn't done in years. I called my neighbor Dave to ask if he could be on standby in case I needed an extra pair of hands. Sarah, are you sure about this? Dave asked. That's a lot of kids all at once. I'm sure. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? Famous last words. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made everything feel possible. I was up at 6 despite having barely slept from excitement and nerves. My first charges, Linda's twin boys Jake and Connor, would arrive at 9, which gave me 3 hours to finalize preparations and calm my jittery stomach with a proper breakfast. I'd converted my living room into a child-friendly activity zone the night before, moving my delicate decorations to higher shelves and setting up different stations, art supplies on the coffee table, building blocks in one corner, and a reading nook with pillows near the window. My kitchen was stocked with healthy snacks and juice boxes, and I'd prepared a simple lunch menu that would work for children of various ages. At 8:30, my phone rang. It was Marcus, and he sounded stressed. Mom, I'm really sorry to bother you, but we're in a bind here. Jessica called 6 different babysitting services yesterday, and they're all booked or unavailable. We even tried asking some of the teenagers in the neighborhood, but everyone's busy. The wedding is in 6 hours. That's unfortunate, honey. Mom, please. I know you're upset about what Jessica said, and you have every right to be. But Emma and Tyler are asking for you. They don't understand why the Grammy can't watch them today. Mention of my grandchildren asking for me tugged at my heartstrings, but I held firm. I told you, Marcus. I already have commitments today. Several families are counting on me. What families? Mom, this doesn't sound like you. Before I could answer, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Linda Patterson's car in my driveway. I have to go, Marcus. My first family just arrived. Mom, wait! I hung up and opened the door to find Linda looking frazzled but grateful, with Jake and Connor bouncing excitedly beside her. Boys, remember what we talked about. You need to listen to Mrs. Morrison and be on your best behavior. We will, Mom, they chorused, already eyeing the activity stations I'd set up. Linda handed me a bag with their supplies and gave me her cell phone number written on a card. I cannot thank you enough for this, Sarah. My deposition starts at 10, and I was honestly panicking last night thinking I might have to cancel. Don't worry about anything. The boys and I are going to have a wonderful time together. After Linda left, Jake and Connor immediately gravitated toward the building blocks. Within minutes, they were deep in concentration, constructing what they informed me was going to be the biggest castle in the whole world. I settled into my armchair with a cup of coffee, watching them work and marveling at their creativity and teamwork. Mrs. Morrison, do you have any dragons for our castle? Connor asked, looking up from his construction project. I don't have toy dragons, but I have something even better. Would you like to hear a story about a dragon while you build? For the next hour, I entertained them with an improvised tale about a friendly dragon named Sparkles who lived in a crystal castle and helped lost children find their way home. The boys were completely engrossed, adding architectural details to their block castle based on my descriptions. At 11:30, my phone rang again. It was Marcus. "Mom, Jessica is crying. She's been looking forward to this wedding for months, and Sarah Henderson specifically asked her to be the maid of honor, because they've been friends since college. If we don't find someone to watch the kids, we're going to have to miss it entirely." I glanced at Jake and Connor, who were now sprawled on the carpet drawing pictures of their dragon castle. They looked completely content and well cared for. "Sorry to hear that, honey, but I'm sure you'll work something out." "Mom, what's really going on here? This isn't like you at all." "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do." I ended the call just as my doorbell rang again. This time it was Melissa Chen, arriving with Sophie for the start of her double shift at the hospital. "Sophie, you remember Mrs. Morrison from the neighborhood, right?" Sophie nodded shyly, then brightened when she saw Jake and Connor's art project. "Can I draw too?" "Of course you can, sweetheart. I have plenty of crayons and paper." Melissa looked around my living room, taking in the organized activity stations and the calm, happy atmosphere. "This is amazing, Sarah. Sophie usually takes forever to warm up to new babysitters. Children respond well to genuine attention and respect," I said, watching Sophie already settling in with her new art supplies. After Melissa left for work, I had 3 children to manage, but they seemed to manage themselves beautifully. Sophie was naturally nurturing with the younger boys, helping them with their coloring and sharing her crayons without being asked. Jake and Connor, meanwhile, were fascinated by Sophie's artistic skills and kept requesting specific additions to their drawings. At noon, I served lunch: grilled cheese sandwiches cut into fun shapes, apple slices, and chocolate milk. The children chatted easily with each other, already forming the kind of fast friendships that kids create effortlessly. "Mrs. Morrison, you're the best babysitter ever," Jake announced through a mouthful of sandwich. "Yeah, you're way better than the last lady who watched us," Connor added. "She just sat on the couch and looked at her phone the whole time." "Well, I think spending time with wonderful children like you 3 is much more interesting than looking at a phone." At 12:30, my phone rang yet again. This time it was Jessica herself. "Sarah, please. I know I hurt your feelings, and I'm so sorry. I was completely out of line saying those things about you. You're an incredible grandmother. And Emma and Tyler adore you." I could hear the tears in her voice, and despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. But I also noticed something else. I could hear Emma crying in the background and Tyler's voice calling, "Grammy, Grammy." "Jessica, I appreciate the apology, but I'm currently watching 3 children who are depending on me. I can't just abandon them." "3 children? Who are you babysitting for?" "Neighbors who needed help. Parents who trust me to take care of their most precious possessions." There was a long pause. "Sarah, I know you're trying to make a point, and maybe I deserve this. But please don't punish Emma and Tyler for my mistakes. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply honoring commitments I made to other families. Can't you just bring Emma and Tyler along? I mean, if you can handle 3 kids, what's 2 more?" The suggestion was so tone-deaf that I almost laughed. "Jessica, these parents trusted me to provide focused, quality care for their children. I'm not going to turn my house into a daycare center just because you failed to plan ahead." I hung up and returned to the living room, where the 3 children were now engaged in an elaborate game that seemed to involve the block castle, several stuffed animals, and a complex storyline that changed every few minutes. At 2 o'clock, Linda called to check in. Her deposition was going well, but it was running longer than expected. "Could I possibly watch the boys until 5 instead of 4? "Of course," I said. "They're having a wonderful time." "You're a lifesaver, Sarah. The boys are usually climbing the walls by now with most babysitters." At 3 o'clock, my phone rang. Again. This time it was Marcus, and he sounded desperate. "Mom, the wedding starts in an hour. Jessica is having a complete breakdown. She's supposed to be getting ready with the other bridesmaids right now, but instead she's at home crying and trying to find last-minute childcare. That's very sad, but I don't see how I can help. Mom, Emma won't stop asking for you. She doesn't understand why you can't watch her today. She keeps saying, 'Grammy promised she would always take care of me.'" That hit me hard. I had made that promise to Emma many times, but I'd also been dismissed and insulted by her mother, who apparently thought I was too decrepit to handle basics. Childcare responsibilities. "Marcus, if Jessica truly believed I was too frail to watch your children, then she should be relieved that I'm not available today. She should be grateful that Emma and Tyler won't be stuck with someone who can barely manage her own house. Mom, I have to go. The children I'm actually watching need my attention." At 4 o'clock, Jennifer Walsh arrived to drop off her 3 children, Michael, Ashley, and Ryan, before her work function. This brought my total to 6 children, ranging in age from 2 to 8. But somehow the house didn't feel chaotic. The older kids naturally helped with the younger ones, and everyone seemed to find their place in the various activities I'd organized. "Wow," Jennifer said, looking around at the scene. "This is incredibly organized. How do you manage so many kids at once?" "Experience and respect for children's intelligence," I said. "Kids rise to meet your expectations of them." Michael, who was 8 and initially skeptical about spending time with a grandma babysitter, quickly became fascinated by the elaborate castle complex that Jake and Connor had built. Soon he was adding engineering improvements and teaching the younger kids about structural stability. At 5 o'clock, Linda returned to pick up Jake and Connor. She looked amazed at how calm and happy her usually rambunctious boys appeared. "We built the best castle ever, Mom," Jake announced. "And Mrs. Morrison told us the coolest dragon story. And we made new friends." "And look at our drawings," Connor added, proudly displaying his artwork. Linda looked at me with something close to awe. "Sarah, I don't know how you did it, but these are the most relaxed and happy I've seen them after a day with a babysitter. Ever. They're wonderful boys. It was my pleasure." "Can Mrs. Morrison watch us again next weekend?" Jake asked hopefully. "We'll definitely talk about that," Linda said, giving me a meaningful look. After Linda left with the twins, I had 4 children remaining: Sophie, Michael, Ashley, and Ryan. The group dynamics shifted slightly, but the atmosphere remained peaceful and engaging. Sophie had taken on a big sister role with Ryan, while Michael and Ashley worked together on increasingly complex building projects. At 6 o'clock, my phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. "Hello, is this Sarah Morrison?" "This is Sarah Henderson. I'm getting married today and I'm calling about Jessica Mitchell." My heart sank. The bride herself was calling me. Jessica was supposed to be my maid of honor, but she's had a family emergency and can't make it to the wedding. I'm calling to see if there's any way you might be able to help with her children so she can still come. I know it's incredibly last minute, but Jessica is one of my oldest friends, and it would mean the world to me to have her here. I felt a stab of guilt. This poor bride was dealing with wedding day drama because of my stubborn pride. "I'm sorry, but I'm currently caring for other children, and I can't take on any additional responsibilities." "Oh, okay, I understand. This is really important to Jessica, and I thought maybe—" "I'm very sorry about the situation, but I made commitments to other families." After I hung up, I felt conflicted for the first time all day. Sophie looked up at me from where she was helping Ryan with a puzzle. "Mrs. Morrison, are you sad?" "A little bit, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated problems." "My mommy says when she has complicated problems, she tries to think about what would make everyone happy. Out of the mouths of babes. But this wasn't just about making everyone happy. This was about respect and recognition." At 7 o'clock, my neighbor, Dave, knocked on my door. He'd been keeping an eye on things from next door as I'd asked, and he looked concerned. "Sarah, I've been watching cars come and go all day. How many kids do you have there?" "4 right now. Why?" "I just got a call from Marcus. He's worried about you. He said you're babysitting for multiple families all at once, and he thinks you might be in over your head." I laughed, which seemed to surprise Dave. "Does it look like I'm in over my head?" He peered into my living room where Michael was reading a story to the 3 younger children, all of them cuddled together on my couch with stuffed animals and blankets. "Actually, no. It looks pretty peaceful there." "That's because it is." "Marcus also said something about you proving a point?" "Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just helping out some neighbors who needed childcare." At 8 o'clock, Melissa returned from her hospital shift to pick up Sophie. She looked exhausted but relieved. "How was she?" Melissa asked, watching Sophie show off her latest artwork to the other children. "Absolutely wonderful. She's been a tremendous help with the younger children all day." "Sophie, did you have fun with Mrs. Morrison?" "The best fun ever, Mommy. Can I come back tomorrow?" Melissa smiled tiredly. "We'll see, sweetheart. Say thank you to Mrs. Morrison." "Thank you." "Mrs. Morrison, you're the best babysitter in the whole world!" After Sophie and Melissa left, I was down to 3 children, Michael, Ashley, and Ryan Walsh. Jennifer wasn't due to pick them up until 10, which gave us 2 more hours together. "Are you tired, Mrs. Morrison?" Ashley asked, snuggling up next, to me on the couch. "Not at all, sweetheart. Are you?" "A little bit. Can you tell us a story?" For the next hour, I told them an elaborate bedtime story about a magical grandmother who could turn into a superhero whenever children needed help. Ryan fell asleep halfway through, curled up against my side, while Michael and Ashley listened, with wide eyes. At 9:30, my phone rang one final time. It was Marcus, and he sounded defeated. "Mom, we missed the wedding. Jessica is devastated. She's been crying for hours, and Emma and Tyler are confused and upset. This whole day has been a disaster." I looked down at little Ryan sleeping peacefully in my arms, then at Michael and Ashley quietly coloring at the coffee table. "I'm sorry to hear that, honey." "Are you really? Because it feels like you wanted this to happen." "I wanted to prove that I'm capable of providing excellent childcare, which I believe I've done today. By ruining Jessica's friendship and making your grandchildren think you don't love them anymore, that stung. Marcus, your children will always be the most important thing in the world to me. But I also deserve to be treated with respect. So this was all about getting back at Jessica? This was about showing that I'm not the frail, incompetent old woman your wife described to her friends." There was a long pause. "Mom, no one thinks you're incompetent. Jessica made a stupid comment when she was stressed, and she's been trying to apologize all day." "Actions have consequences, Marcus. Maybe next time Jessica will think before she speaks." At 10 o'clock, Jennifer arrived to collect her children. Michael and Ashley were reluctant to leave, and Ryan had to be gently awakened from his nap. "How did it go?" Jennifer asked, looking around at my still organized living room. "Wonderfully. Your children are delightful. They can be a handful, especially all 3 together. They were perfect angels." Michael was incredibly helpful with the younger children. Ashley has a beautiful, nurturing spirit, and Ryan is just a joy to be around. "Mrs. Morrison, can you watch us again soon?" Michael asked as Jennifer gathered their things. "I would love that." After they left, I surveyed my quiet house. Toys were scattered around, there were crumbs on the coffee table, and several pillows were on the floor. But overall, the place looked remarkably good for having hosted 6 children for various lengths of time throughout the day. More importantly, I felt energized rather than exhausted. Every single child had been well-behaved, engaged, and happy. Not one parent had returned to find chaos or problems. I'd successfully managed multiple overlapping schedules, different meal times, and various age-appropriate activities. I'd proven my point, but at what cost? My phone had 13 missed calls from Marcus and Jessica, and my grandchildren had spent the day confused and disappointed. The bride had been upset. Jessica had missed one of the most important events in her friend's life, and my relationship with my son was clearly strained. As I cleaned up the remaining toys and put my living room back in order, I wondered if proving I was right had been worth all the collateral damage. But then I remembered Jessica's words. Too frail. Can barely manage her own house. Real babysitter. Sometimes people need to learn that their assumptions about others could have real consequences. Today had certainly been educational for everyone involved. Sunday morning brought an uncomfortable silence from my family. No phone calls, no text messages, no surprise visits from my grandchildren. The quiet felt heavier than usual in my small house on Maple Street. I tried to focus on my regular Sunday routine, coffee, the newspaper, and tending to my garden, but the weight of yesterday's events kept pulling at my thoughts. Around 10 a.m., while I was deadheading my chrysanthemums, my neighbor Dave appeared at the fence separating our properties. Morning, Sarah. How are you feeling after your big day yesterday? Fine. A little tired, but fine. Dave leaned against the fence post, studying my face. You know, I've been thinking about what you pulled off yesterday. 6 kids, multiple families, overlapping schedules. That's impressive logistics for anyone, let alone someone our age. Our age? I raised an eyebrow at him. Speak for yourself, Dave. I'm not ready for the retirement home yet. That's exactly my point. But I have to ask, was it worth it? Missing your son's wedding event, I mean? I paused in my gardening, my hands still wrapped around a particularly stubborn weed. They weren't at my son's wedding. It was his wife's friend's wedding. And yes, it was worth it. Those families needed help, and I provided it. Come on, Sarah. This wasn't really about helping neighbors, was it? Dave had known me for 15 years. He'd been there when Robert died, had helped me through the first difficult months of widowhood, and had watched me rebuild my life into something independent and fulfilling. He could read me better than most people. Maybe it was about more than just helping neighbors, I admitted. But that doesn't make it wrong. No, it doesn't. But it might make it complicated. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Linda Patterson knocked on my door carrying a homemade apple pie and wearing a grateful smile. I hope I'm not bothering you, Sarah. I just wanted to thank you again for yesterday, and to bring you this. That's very thoughtful, Linda, but it wasn't necessary. Oh, it was absolutely necessary. Do you have a few minutes to talk? We sat in my living room with coffee and slices of her delicious pie. Linda seemed to be building up to something important. Sarah, I have to tell you something. After I picked up the boys yesterday, I called the other book club members to tell them about the amazing babysitter I'd found. When I mentioned your name, Jessica got very quiet. My coffee cup paused halfway to my lips. Oh? She told us what happened. About the comment she made about you being too frail, and about how you were babysitting for everyone else while she and Marcus couldn't find anyone to watch Emma and Tyler. I set down my cup carefully. I see. Sarah, I feel terrible. I had no idea that my conversation with Jessica had caused problems in your family. If I'd known, I never would have asked you to watch the boys. Linda, you didn't cause any problems. Jessica's assumptions and my response to them caused problems. You simply needed help with childcare, and I was happy to provide it. But I feel like I was unknowingly part of some kind of revenge plot. Sighed. It wasn't revenge exactly, it was more like a demonstration. A demonstration of what? That I'm not the frail, incompetent old woman Jessica described to you and the others. Linda was quiet for a moment, then she started laughing. Not mean laughter, but genuine amusement. Sarah, I have to tell you something. When Jessica made that comment about you being too frail, I actually disagreed with her. You did? Yes. I remember seeing you at Emma's birthday party last year. You were the one who organized all the games, who got down on the floor to play with the kids, who carried the heavy cooler from the car without any help. You seemed more energetic than half the parents there. Then why didn't you say anything? Because Jessica seemed so convinced. And honestly, I thought maybe she knew something I didn't. Maybe you'd had health problems or something. But watching you yesterday with all those children, seeing how organized and capable you were, Jessica was completely wrong about you. Thank you for saying that. Sarah, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you regret it? Missing your granddaughter's grandmother time, I mean. Missing being there for your family when they needed you? The question hit deeper than I expected. I miss Emma and Tyler every day, but I don't regret showing Jessica that her assumptions about me were wrong. Even if it cost your family something important? I thought about that for a long time before answering. Linda, I've been taking care of other people my entire adult life. I took care of my husband through his illness. I helped raise my son, and I've been a devoted grandmother since Emma was born. But somewhere along the way, people started seeing me as just an old woman who needed to be managed and protected rather than someone with her own capabilities and feelings. I understand that, but let me finish. Yesterday wasn't just about babysitting. It was about proving that I still have value, that I'm still capable of contributing something meaningful. Those families trusted me with their most precious possessions, and I didn't let them down. Linda nodded thoughtfully. You're right. And for what it's worth, the boys haven't stopped talking about their day with you. They want to know when they can come back. I'd love to have them again. Good, because I was hoping you might be interested in watching them regularly. Maybe once or twice a week. I'd pay you, of course. We can discuss the details later, but I'm definitely interested. After Linda left, I felt lighter somehow. At least one good thing had come out of yesterday's events. I'd found a new purpose, a way to stay active and useful while helping families in my community. Monday morning brought a phone call from Melissa Chen. Sarah, I hope I'm not calling too early. I wanted to talk to you about Sophie's day on Saturday. She was absolutely wonderful, Melissa. Such a sweet, helpful child. That's what I'm calling about. Sophie hasn't stopped talking about you since. I picked her up. She keeps asking when she can see Mrs. Morrison again, and honestly, I haven't seen her this excited about spending time with a babysitter ever. I enjoyed her company too. Sarah, I have a proposition for you. I work 3 12-hour shifts a week at the hospital, usually weekends and one weekday. Sophie's been struggling with the inconsistent childcare situation, and I think having someone reliable like you would be amazing for her. Would you be interested in watching her regularly? I'd love that, Melissa. Great. And I hope you don't mind me saying this, but whatever happened with your family this weekend, I think you handled it exactly right. Sophie mentioned that you seemed sad about something, but she also said you never let it affect how you treated the children you were watching. That's the mark of a true professional. Thank you, Melissa. That means a lot. Tuesday brought a visit from Jennifer Walsh, who arrived with all 3 of her children in tow. We were in the neighborhood, and the kids insisted on stopping by to see you, she explained, as Michael, Ashley, and Ryan bounded up my front steps. Mrs. Morrison! Mrs. Morrison! Ryan called out, throwing his arms around my legs. Can we play with the blocks again? Of course you can, sweetheart. While the children settled into my living room, Jennifer and I talked in the kitchen. Sarah, I have to be honest with you. I've been thinking about Saturday ever since I picked up the kids. The way you managed all those children, kept everyone happy and engaged, maintained order without being strict. It was impressive. Thank you. But I also can't stop thinking about what it must have cost you personally. The kids mentioned that you got sad phone calls throughout the day. I poured Jennifer a cup of coffee and chose my words carefully. Sometimes, doing the right thing for yourself means disappointing other people. Was it the right thing, though? I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for what you did for our family, but I can't help feeling like I was part of something bigger that maybe I didn't fully understand. Jennifer, let me ask you something. When you first heard that I was offering babysitting services, what was your initial reaction? Honestly, I was surprised. I thought you were too much of a grandmother to be a professional babysitter. What do you mean by that? I guess I had this idea that grandmothers babysit their own grandchildren out of love, but that taking care of other people's children was different, more demanding, requiring more energy and skill. And what do you think? Now? Jennifer glanced toward the living room, where I could hear her children laughing and playing contentedly. Now I think I was completely wrong. You're not just a grandmother who happens to babysit. You're someone who genuinely understands children and knows how to bring out the best in them. Thank you for saying that. Sarah, would you consider watching my kids on a regular basis? Maybe 2 afternoons a week? I've been turning down overtime shifts because I can't find reliable childcare, but with someone like you, I'd be happy to discuss it. After Jennifer and her children left, I realized that my weekend demonstration had accomplished something I hadn't fully expected. I'd not only proven my capabilities to Jessica and my family, but I'd also established myself as a trusted childcare provider in my community. 3 families had already asked about regular arrangements, and I suspected more would follow. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Marcus, and he sounded different, less frustrated, more thoughtful. Hi, Mom. How are you doing? I'm fine. Honey, how are Emma and Tyler? They miss you. They keep asking when they can see the Grammy again. My heart clenched. I miss them too. Mom, I've been thinking about what happened this weekend, and I owe you an apology. Marcus. No, let me say this. I called you selfish for not dropping everything to help us out. But the truth is, you had every right to make other plans. You had commitments to other families, and you honored those commitments even when it was difficult. Thank you for saying that. I also want you to know that Jessica and I have been talking a lot about how we see you, how we treat you, and how we take your help for granted. Oh? Mom, you've been there for us since Emma was born. You've babysat at a moment's notice, you've helped us through tough times, and you've never asked for anything in return. Somewhere along the way, we started seeing that as your obligation, rather than your choice. I felt tears starting to form. Marcus? And Jessica realizes now that her comment about you being too frail wasn't just wrong, it was hurtful and disrespectful. She's mortified about what she said, and she wants to make it right. How? She'd like to come over and apologize in person. Would that be okay? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to hold on to my anger, to make Jessica work harder for forgiveness. But another part of me missed my family and wanted to repair the damage. Yes, that would be okay. Great. And Mom? There's something else. Jessica has been telling everyone about what you did on Saturday. How you watched 6 children from different families, how organized and capable you were, how much the kids loved spending time with you. She has? She feels terrible about missing the wedding, but she's also incredibly impressed by what you accomplished. She said she couldn't have handled half that many kids on her best day. That's surprisingly generous of her. She also said something else. She said she finally understands why Emma and Tyler love you so much. You don't just watch children, you really see them and connect with them. Thursday morning, Jessica arrived at my door with Emma and Tyler in tow. My grandchildren spotted me through the screen door and immediately started bouncing with excitement. Grammy! Grammy? We missed you so much. I opened the door and immediately found myself enveloped in small arms and enthusiastic hugs. For a moment, all the tension and hurt from the past week melted away. I missed you too, my darlings. So very much. Jessica stood back, watching our reunion with tears in her eyes. She looked tired and genuinely remorseful. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I was completely wrong about everything, and I hurt you in the process. Jessica, no, please let me say this. I made assumptions about your abilities based on your age and the fact that you use a walking cane sometimes. I was wrong, and I'm ashamed of myself. Emma tugged on my hand. Grammy? Mommy said you watched lots of kids on Saturday, and they all loved you. That's right, sweetheart. Can we meet them sometime? The kids you watched? I looked at Jessica, who nodded with a small smile. I think that could be arranged. Tyler, meanwhile, had discovered the leftover art supplies from Saturday and was already settling in at my coffee table with crayons and paper. Sarah? Jessica continued. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to ask for your forgiveness. And I'd like to ask if you'd consider watching Emma and Tyler again sometime. Of course I'll watch them again. They're my grandchildren and I love them more than anything. Thank you. And Sarah? I heard from Linda Patterson and some of the other book club members about how you're starting to babysit regularly for families in the neighborhood. Word travels fast. I think it's wonderful. You're obviously gifted with children, and those families are lucky to have you. Thank you, Jessica. That means a lot coming from you. I was wondering, would you maybe consider watching Emma and Tyler one afternoon a week? As a regular thing? I could pay you the same rate you're charging the other families. I was surprised by the offer. You want to hire me as your babysitter? I want to hire you as the best babysitter in the neighborhood, who happens to also be my children's grandmother. Emma looked up from the coloring book she'd found. Grammy, does that mean we get to see you every week? It looks like it, sweetheart. As I watched my grandchildren settling back into my living room like they'd never been away, I realized that my weekend demonstration had accomplished something I hadn't fully anticipated. I'd not only proven my worth to Jessica and the community, but I'd also redefined my role in my family's life. I was no longer just the grandmother who was expected to drop everything to help out. I was a professional childcare provider who happened to love Emma and Tyler with all my heart. The distinction mattered more than I'd realized. There's one more thing, Jessica said quietly while the children were occupied with their activities. I want you to know that I've learned something important from all this. What's that? I learned that respecting someone means seeing their full capabilities, not just focusing on their limitations. You're not just my children's grandmother. You're an accomplished, capable woman who has a lot to offer the world. Thank you, Jessica. That's exactly what I needed to hear. 3 weeks had passed since what I'd started calling the weekend that changed everything. My new routine was busier than I'd been in years, but it was a good kind of busy. I had regular babysitting arrangements with Linda's twins on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, Sophie Chen every other weekend, and Jennifer's 3 children on Wednesday evenings. Emma and Tyler came to my house every Monday afternoon, which had become their favorite day of the week. My house had transformed from a quiet retirement sanctuary into a vibrant hub of childhood activity. I'd purchased child-sized furniture for my living room, installed safety locks on cabinets I'd never thought twice about, and my refrigerator was now stocked with juice boxes and string cheese alongside my usual groceries. The money wasn't the primary motivation, but it was nice to have some extra income. More importantly, I felt needed and valued in a way I hadn't experienced since Robert's death. Each family treated me as a professional, asking my advice about their children's development and trusting my judgment on important matters. But it was what happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon in November that truly tested everything I'd learned about myself and what I was capable of. I was watching Linda's twins, Jake and Connor, along with Sophie Chen, whose mother had picked up an extra shift at the hospital. The 3 children were settled around my coffee table working on a puzzle when my phone rang. Sarah, thank God you answered. It was Jennifer Walsh, and she sounded panicked. I need your help. There's been an emergency at work, and I have to come in immediately. My regular after-school care fell through, and the kids are being dropped. Off at home in 20 minutes with no one there to meet them. What do you need me to do? Could you possibly go to my house and watch them there? I know it's not our usual arrangement, and I know you already have other children with you, but I'm desperate. I looked at the 3 children contentedly working on their puzzle. Jennifer, I can't leave Jake, Connor, and Sophie here alone. Could you maybe bring them with you? I know it's a lot to ask, but Michael has a key hidden under the flower pot, and the kids know where everything is. I'll pay you double for the inconvenience. It's not about the money, Jennifer. Are you sure there's no one else? Sarah, you're the only person I trust with my children. Please. Something in her voice convinced me. Okay, we'll be there in 30 minutes. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. I hung up and looked at my 3 charges. Kids, we're going on an adventure. We're going to help out some friends of mine. What kind of adventure? Sophie asked, looking up from the puzzle. We're going to another house to watch some more children whose mommy had to go to work unexpectedly. More kids to play with? Connor asked excitedly. That's right. 3 more children, Michael, Ashley, and Ryan. Cool, Jake said. This is going to be like a big play date. I quickly packed a bag with snacks, first aid supplies, and some activities, then loaded the 3 children into my car. The drive to Jennifer's house took 15 minutes, and I used the time to explain to my current charges that they needed to be helpful and well-behaved, because we were going to help a family in need. We arrived at Jennifer's house just as the school bus was pulling up. I retrieved the hidden key and opened the front door as Michael, Ashley, and Ryan came walking up the driveway. Mrs. Morrison, Ashley called out, running toward me. What are you doing here? Your mom had to go to work, so I'm here to watch you. And I brought some friends. Michael looked skeptical as he approached. Who are these kids? This is Jake and Connor, and this is Sophie. They're some of the other children I babysit for. Oh, Michael's expression shifted from suspicion to interest. Cool. Do you want to see my new video game? Within minutes, the 6 children had sorted themselves into groups. Michael and Jake, being the oldest, immediately bonded over video games and Lego sets. Connor and Ryan, both energetic 4-year-olds, started an elaborate game of chase around the living room. Sophie and Ashley, close in age and both naturally nurturing, decided to set up a pretend tea party with Ashley's dolls. Settled into Jennifer's kitchen with a cup of coffee, keeping one eye on the various activities happening throughout the house. This was definitely more challenging than my usual one-family arrangements, but the children were managing beautifully. Around 4 o'clock, my phone rang again. This time it was Melissa Chen. Sarah, I'm so sorry to bother you, but there's been a terrible accident at the hospital. A multi-car collision, and they've called in all available staff. I know Sophie is supposed to be with you until 6, but I'm going to be here until at least midnight. Is there any way you could keep her longer? I looked into the living room where Sophie was carefully serving pretend tea to Ashley and 2 stuffed animals. Of course, Melissa. Don't worry about Sophie, she's having a wonderful time. You're amazing, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you. At 4:30, Linda Patterson called. Sarah, my deposition ran over and now I'm stuck in traffic. I'm not going to make it to pick up the boys until at least 6:30. Is that okay? That's fine, Linda. The boys are having a great time. At 5 o'clock, Jennifer called to check in. How's everything going? I feel terrible about leaving you with so many kids. Everyone's doing great. The children are all playing together beautifully. Really? 6 kids from different families and no chaos? Really? They're all well-behaved children, and they've found ways to entertain each other. Sarah, you're incredible. I'm going to be here until at least 8 tonight. This emergency is bigger than we thought. Don't worry about it. We're fine here. At 5:30, disaster almost struck. Connor, who had been playing an increasingly wild game of tag with Ryan, tripped over a toy truck and fell hard on his elbow. He started crying immediately, and I could see from across the room that he was genuinely hurt. "Connor, sweetie, let me see your arm," I said, hurrying over to him. The other children gathered around, looking concerned. Connor's elbow was already starting to swell, and he couldn't bend it without crying. "It hurts, Mrs. Morrison," he sobbed. I examined his arm carefully. It didn't appear to be broken, but it was definitely injured. Meanwhile, 5 other children were watching me anxiously, waiting to see how I would handle the situation. "Okay. Connor, I think we need to put some ice on that elbow," I said calmly. "Sophie, can you help me find some ice in the kitchen?" "Should we call an ambulance?" Michael asked, looking worried. "I don't think we need an ambulance, but we definitely need to take care of Connor's arm. Jake, can you help me find a clean towel?" For the next 20 minutes, I managed Connor's injury while keeping the other 5 children calm and occupied. I wrapped ice in a towel and applied it to Connor's elbow, gave him some children's pain reliever from my emergency kit, and settled him on the couch with a blanket and his favorite stuffed animal. The other children, rather than becoming more rowdy in the chaos, actually became more helpful and considerate. Michael found Connor's favorite movie and set it up on the TV. Ashley brought him a glass of water. Sophie sat beside him and held his uninjured hand. Jake and Ryan quietly moved their louder activities to another room. By 6 o'clock, Connor was feeling much better, and his elbow was no longer swelling. I called Linda to let her know about the minor accident, and she was grateful for how I'd handled it. "Sarah, I can't believe you managed an injury with 5 other children around. Most professional daycare centers would have called parents immediately and sent everyone home. The children were actually very helpful. They took care of each other. That's because they were following your example. You stayed calm, so they stayed calm." At 6:30, Linda arrived to pick up Jake and Connor. Connor proudly showed off his bandaged elbow and told his mother all about how Mrs. Morrison had taken care of him and how the other kids had helped. "Mom, can we come back tomorrow?" Jake asked as they were leaving. "We'll see, honey. Say thank you to Mrs. Morrison and all your new friends." At 7 o'clock, my phone rang again. This time it was Marcus. "Hi, Mom. I hope I'm not bothering you. Jessica and I were wondering if you might be available for an emergency babysitting situation tomorrow evening. What's going on?" Jessica's father had a heart attack this afternoon. He's stable now, but Jessica wants to fly to Phoenix to be with her mother. I need to take her to the airport and handle some work emergencies that came up because of the situation. I looked around Jennifer's living room, where 4 children were now quietly watching a movie together, sharing blankets and snacks like old friends. "Marcus, I'm not sure tomorrow evening will work for me. I may have other commitments." "Other commitments?" "Mom, this is a family emergency. I understand that and I want to help. But I also have obligations to other families who depend on me. But surely in an emergency situation..." "Marcus, let me check my schedule and see what I can do. I'll call you back in an hour." After I hung up, I realized something important had happened. For the first time since starting my babysitting business, I had to choose between my family's needs and my professional commitments. The old Sarah would have immediately said yes to Marcus without even considering her other obligations. But I was no longer just Emma and Tyler's grandmother who was always available. I was a professional childcare provider with multiple families depending on me. At 8 o'clock, Jennifer finally arrived home, looking exhausted but grateful. "Sarah, I cannot believe what you've accomplished here today. 6 children, an injury, multiple schedule changes, and everyone looks happy and calm. It was actually easier than I expected. The children were wonderful." Michael, Ashley, Ryan, come say goodbye to Mrs. Morrison and her friends. The children gathered around me for hugs and thank yous. Ryan, who had been shy when I first started, babysitting for the family, wrapped his arms around my legs and said, "Mrs. Morrison, you're the best babysitter in the whole world." "Can Sophie and Jake and Connor come back and play with us again?" Ashley asked. "We'll see, sweetheart. That depends on their families." After Jennifer loaded my original 3 charges into my car, she pulled me aside. "Sarah, what you did today was extraordinary. Managing 6 children from different families, handling an emergency, keeping everyone safe and happy, that's not just babysitting. That's professional childcare management." "Thank you, Jennifer. I mean it. You should consider expanding your services. There are a lot of families in this community who could use someone with your skills and reliability." The drive home was quiet, with Sophie dozing in the back seat and Jake and Connor talking softly about their day. As I pulled into my driveway, I realized that today had been a turning point. I'd successfully managed 6 children, handled a medical emergency, coordinated with multiple families, and maintained everyone's safety and happiness for over 6 hours. More importantly, I'd done it without feeling overwhelmed or frail or inadequate. I felt competent and capable and useful. At 9 o'clock, after Melissa had picked up Sophie and thanked me profusely for the extended day, I called Marcus back. "Mom, have you thought about tomorrow evening?" "Yes, I have. Marcus, I need you to understand something. When I agreed to start babysitting for families in the neighborhood, I made professional commitments. These families depend on me, and I can't just cancel on them because something comes up with our family. But this is an emergency, Mom. I understand that, and I want to help Emma and Tyler. But I also need you to respect that I have other obligations." "So, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you need me to watch Emma and Tyler tomorrow evening, you need to ask me the same way you would ask any other professional babysitter. Give me as much notice as possible. Understand that I might have other commitments, and respect my decision if I'm not available." There was a long pause. "Mom, are you saying you might not be available to help us in an emergency?" "I'm saying that I need you to treat me like the professional childcare provider I've become, not just like the grandmother who's always available as a backup plan." Okay. I think I understand. So, can I ask you professionally? Would you be available to watch Emma and Tyler tomorrow evening from 6 to 10? Let me check my schedule. I looked at my appointment book, which was now filled with various childcare commitments. Yes, I can do that. My rate is $15 per hour for 2 children. Your rate? Mom? You're going to charge us? Marcus, I charge all my families the same rate. It's not about the money. It's about being treated with the same respect I give to my other clients. Okay, I can understand that. So $15 an hour for 4 hours, that's $60? That's correct. And Mom, thank you for being professional about this and for being available when we needed you. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet living room reflecting on the day. I'd successfully managed 6 children, handled a medical emergency, coordinated with multiple families, and established professional boundaries with my own son. Most importantly, I'd proven to myself that Jessica's initial assessment of me being too frail was not only wrong, but laughably inaccurate. I was thriving in ways I hadn't imagined possible. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jennifer. "Thank you again for today. The kids haven't stopped talking about their play date with your other families. Would you be interested in organizing a regular multi-family playdate? I think the parents would love it." I smiled as I typed back, "I'd be happy to discuss it. Let's talk about scheduling and logistics next week." As I got ready for bed, I realized that what had started as a way to prove Jessica wrong had evolved into something much more significant. I'd discovered a new career, found my purpose, and established my value in the community. But perhaps most importantly, I'd redefined my relationship with my own family. I was no longer just the grandmother who was taken for granted. I was a professional who happened to also be Emma and Tyler's grandmother, and that distinction made all the difference in the world. 6 months after the weekend that started it, I found myself sitting in the community center conference room facing 12 parents who had requested a meeting with me. Word about my childcare services had spread far beyond the original book club families, and what had begun as proving a point to Jessica had transformed into something I never could have imagined. Sarah, we've been discussing this for weeks, said Patricia Hoffman, a local attorney whose twin daughters I'd been watching twice a week. We think you should consider opening an official childcare center. I looked around the room at faces that had become familiar over the past months. These weren't just clients anymore. They were friends, advocates, and people who genuinely valued what I brought to their children's lives. That's quite a leap from babysitting, I said carefully. But that's just it, interjected Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, whose son Carlos had become one of my regular charges. What you do isn't just babysitting. You create environments where children thrive. My son has learned more social skills and creativity in the past few months with you than he did in 2 years of traditional daycare. The children call it Sarah's school, added Thomas Chen, Melissa's husband. Sophie comes home every day talking about the projects you do, the stories you tell, the way you help them solve problems together. I thought about the past 6 months. My little house on Maple Street had indeed become something of a learning laboratory. I'd developed age-appropriate activities that challenged children while keeping them engaged. I'd created systems for managing multiple children that emphasized cooperation and mutual respect. I'd even started incorporating basic educational elements, not formal lessons, but natural learning opportunities that arose during play. The logistics would be complicated, I said. Licensing, insurance, regulations. We've already researched that, said Jennifer Walsh, pulling out a folder. Several of us work in law, healthcare, and business. We're prepared to help you navigate the bureaucracy if you're interested. And financially, added Linda Patterson, we've run the numbers. Based on what you're already earning and what we know other centers charge, you could be very successful. I was touched by their enthusiasm, but also somewhat overwhelmed. I appreciate all of this, but I need to think about whether I want to take on something so formal and structured. Sarah, said David Chen, leaning forward in his chair. 6 months ago, our families were struggling with unreliable, expensive childcare. Our children were unhappy, we were stressed, and we felt like we had no good options. You changed all of that. Not just for our individual families, added Patricia. You've created a model that other communities could benefit from. Experienced, caring adults who understand child development and prioritize relationships over profit. As I drove home from the meeting, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed since that October morning when I overheard Jessica's phone conversation. The hurt and anger I'd felt then seemed like distant memories. What remained was a sense of purpose and accomplishment I hadn't experienced in years. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. It was Jessica. Hi, Sarah. I hope I'm not bothering you. Marcus and I wanted to ask you something. Of course. What's on your mind? Well, Emma's birthday is next month, and she specifically requested that her party be at Grammy's house with all her friends from Sarah's school. I smiled. The children I cared for regularly had indeed become close friends, often asking when they could have play dates together outside of our structured time. I think that sounds wonderful, Jessica. There's something else. Marcus and I have been talking, and we realize that we never properly acknowledged what you accomplished when this all started. Jessica, we've moved past all that. Please let me say this. When I called you too frail that day, I wasn't just wrong about your physical capabilities. I was wrong about who you are as a person. You're not just Emma and Tyler's grandmother. You're an educator, a child development expert, and a small business owner. You've built something incredible. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. I've been telling everyone about what you've done. My book club friends can't believe that the woman they worried was too old to babysit is now running the most sought-after childcare service in 3 neighborhoods. Speaking of which, I said, I wanted to tell you something. The parents have approached me about expanding into a formal childcare center. Sarah, that's amazing. Are you going to do it? I'm considering it. It's a big step. What's holding you back? I thought about her question. I suppose I'm wondering if I'm ready for something that formal and demanding at my age. Sarah Morrison, did you just question whether you're capable of something because of your age? I laughed, recognizing the irony. I suppose I did. Well, let me remind you of something. 6 months ago, you successfully managed 6 children from different families during multiple emergencies while coordinating with their parents and handling a medical situation. If you can do that, you can certainly run a child care center. That evening, I called Marcus to talk through the opportunity. Mom, I think it's incredible that these families have so much faith in you, he said. But the real question is, what do you want to do? Honestly, I love working with the children. I love the challenge of creating environments where they can learn and grow. And I love feeling like I'm contributing something valuable to my community. Then it sounds like you have your answer. But starting a business at 68? Mom, age is just a number. You've proven that over and over again in the past 6 months. 2 weeks later, I attended another community meeting, this time with even more parents in attendance. Word had spread about the possibility of a formal childcare center, and interest was overwhelming. We've secured a location, announced Jennifer Walsh. The old community arts building on Elm Street is available for lease, and it's already zoned for educational use. We've also connected with a lawyer who specializes in childcare licensing, added Linda Patterson. She's reviewed your background and experience, and she thinks you'll have no trouble meeting the requirements. The question is, said Dr. Rodriguez, are you ready to take this leap? I looked around the room at the faces of parents who had become not just clients, but advocates and friends. I thought about their children, who had thrived under my care and formed lasting friendships with each other. I thought about Emma and Tyler, who were so proud to tell people that their Grammy was the best teacher in the world. Yes, I said finally. I'm ready. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Several parents had tears in their eyes, and I found myself getting emotional as well. But I have one condition, I continued. This can't just be Sarah's childcare center. It needs to be our center, a place built on the relationships we've formed and the values we share. What do you want to call it? Asked Patricia Hoffman. Thought about Emma's birthday party request, about the children referring to their time with me as Sarah's school, about the journey that had brought us all together. Maple Street Learning Center, I said. Because it all started on Maple Street, and because learning happens everywhere when children feel safe and valued. 6 months later, I stood in the bright, cheerful main room of Maple Street Learning Center, watching 23 children engaged in various activities. Some were building elaborate block structures, others were painting at easels, and a small group was gathered around me for story time. At 71, I was a licensed childcare center director, a small business owner, and according to the local newspaper, an inspiration to anyone who thinks retirement means slowing down. Jessica walked in with Emma and Tyler for pickup time, and I could see the pride in her eyes as she watched her children playing happily with their friends. Any regrets? She asked quietly as we watched the children. About what? About that weekend, when you proved me wrong instead of just babysitting Emma and Tyler. I thought about her question seriously. Jessica, if I had just accepted your assessment of me as too frail and incompetent, none of this would have happened. Those 12 families would still be struggling with unreliable childcare. These children wouldn't have formed these friendships. And I would still be sitting in my living room wondering if I had anything left to contribute to the world. So, no regrets? No regrets. Sometimes the best thing you can do for everyone involved is refuse to accept other people's limitations on who you can be. As the last families collected their children and headed home, I walked through my center, turning off lights and securing the building for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new learning opportunities, and new ways to help children and families thrive. I thought about that morning 6 months ago when I'd overheard Jessica's phone call and felt so hurt and diminished. That version of myself seemed like a different person now, someone who had allowed others to define her worth and capabilities. The woman locking up Maple Street Learning Center was someone else entirely. Someone who had discovered that being underestimated could be the beginning of something extraordinary, rather than the end of something valuable. As I drove home to my quiet house on Maple Street, I smiled thinking about tomorrow's activities and the children who would fill my days, with laughter, questions, and endless possibilities. Sometimes proving someone wrong turns out to be the best thing you can do for everyone involved, including yourself. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.